hurry up and wait.
You got it right. You got it right.
There's a lot of production jobs. Waiting all day for like the 10-second shot.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know.
And when they come, they don't want to stop.
Right, they just run. I know they run through. Certain people might, because you're doing audio, you're just getting ambulance, right? They don't usually stop here and talk to us.
Unless they're really
It should be okay. Yeah, yeah. I'm waiting for my director. I'm just gonna let him know what my limit is.
Let me know.
And I think it should be fine.
All right.
Eric, do you copy? Eric, do you copy? I'm saying it, Mac on camera 1. Okay, I just wanted to check in with him on, I have an AP camera next to me and checking on my limit of how far I can swim. I know, I'm trying to, I'm not, yeah, I'm not going to be centered, but that's what it's going to be. No, Mac, camera 1.
police cars pulling up and somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I want you to. So I didn't know what you wanted to do. time is your break? No? I don't know what time is your break. You know, if you don't have it now, I know what, because I say the only time I can sorry, I'll be careful. That's why I'm
Cái gì mà phải tốt mồ hôi á?
What camera are you going? Chris is.
Desce umas escadas, umas escadas, tá? Hoje procura o mesmo corredor até o fim.
But now the challenge is
Would you pass waiting for you under the integration? Copy that table.
I see your face, please?
Sure.
Are you with UNTV?
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, me too. Yeah, I stay here when they come to respond. I usually have a page with another person open. one guy was, one of the security, I don't know who he was, but he was worried about my cable. I'm like,
Yeah, call me. You have my number? No.
maybe I do. I gotta see.
Okay, good. Here we go. So, I think it's good.
How you doing? No, usually not. No tripod. They don't even give me a chair. So tomorrow's is coming. See. Lauren.
अभी है ना सीआरपी नीचे
Yes, the turn.
Yes, this side, downstairs, Vienna Cafe.
That's all the way. Are you good, Danny? Are you good, Danny? Got a shot at it. Just a second. There might be. Back. Back.
I'm listening.
كنجي أنا يا رحمة.
James, you want to just widen out too?
Oh, that's right.
He's going back down to widen it now. Just caught him at the top of the steps.
No, that's one piece.
some limo action out front. I don't know who it is, but somebody's pulling up.
بالك عليه.
Oh my God, come on.
Aber ich habe ja auch gesagt,
Takes, but we've got to just.
Good morning, everybody. See already a couple of ministers coming in. Please have a seat, dear colleagues. We have to start on time. Please have a seat right now.
morning. Good morning. I would appreciate if you can take your seats. We are going to start now.
Good morning, everybody, and please have a seat. If I could ask for everybody's attention and finding a seat. I call to order the high-level plenary meeting to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. I would kindly ask all delegations to take a seat and keep silent. On the left side of the room, could you please, also on the blue seats, on the left side, please take a seat. I call to order the high-level plenary meeting to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. I would like to warmly welcome all of you to this milestone anniversary of our United Nations. Now, when everybody has found a seat, and in respect to the performance we are hearing right now, I now invite the artists to take their position on the stage. I would like to welcome the Met Chorus artists, accompanied by pianist Mr. Howard Watkins, together with the Sing for Hope youth choirs, under the direction of Mr. Tillman Michael. They will be performing this morning the commemoration of the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations. I now invite delegations to sit down, enjoy and listen to the musical performance. Nations in ruins. More than 70 million dead. 2 world wars in a single generation. The unspeakable horrors of the Holocaust. And 72 territories still under colonialism. This was our world 80 years ago. A desperate world, grasping for any sign of hope. Courageous leaders gave that hope through our Charter of the United Nations. When signed on 26 June 1945, it was more than yet another empty political declaration. It was a promise from leaders to their people and from nations to one another that humanity had learned from its darkest chapters. It was a pledge not to deliver us to heaven, but to never again be dragged into hell by the forces of hatred and unchecked ambition. An acknowledgement that our failures came not from a lack of power, but from complacency. And the strong belief that our world could be better, that we could be better together. In the darkest moments of history, our grandmothers and grandfathers had the humility, grace, and I dare to say good sense to put aside their differences, their self-interest and their resentments, and to agree to work together. When faced with a crossroads, they chose the right path, the path of hope. But hope is not blind optimism. It's not the guarantee that everything will work out. It's a deep belief that we are doing the right thing, regardless of whether we succeed. Today, the hours indeed feel dark once again. We stand at a similar crossroads. We see children without parents searching for food in the ruins of Gaza, the ongoing war in Ukraine, sexual violence in Sudan, gangs terrorizing people in Haiti, unfiltered hatred online, and floods and droughts all over the world. Is this a world envisioned in our charter? Do we really need to relearn the hard lessons? Today is not about celebrating. It's about remembering those hard lessons and drawing on the courage to once again agree, to find hope instead of resignation, to find the spirit from 80 years ago once again, to choose the right path, not because of any guarantee, but because of the conviction that it's the right thing to do. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, Heads of States, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to thank the artists, especially the young artists, for their wonderful performance, which have set the tone for our event. Today, as we mark 80 years of our United Nations, we are once again standing at a crossroads. We cannot take the easy path and simply give up. We have to choose the right path to show the world that we can be better together. Not because the last 80 years were perfect, not because for 80 years, because we have tried. For 80 years, this building has stood as a monument to our shared hopes for a better future. Yes, we have disagreed, we have struggled, but we have also triumphed. For 80 years, this institution has driven progress on sustainable development, peace and security, and human rights. Today's commemoration is not the story of an institution. It's a story of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people who tried to turn hope in something real. The people who stood between war and peace and chose peace. The people who are risking their lives to deliver food in Gaza. The people who are supplying education materials to girls in Afghanistan. The people who not only wear the symbol of the United Nations, but are out there on the ground, showing how we are better together. This is why this is the theme of this 80th session, better together. It's more than a hot motto, it's a hard-won truth. It's our commitment for the next 80 years. Our commitment to not only hope for problems to vanish, but to find the courage to confront them. Better together means to act where action is hard, to choose dialogue and diplomacy when division is easier. Hope at this 80th anniversary means that this session is not remembered not only for its milestone year, but as a moment when we called on extraordinary resolve equal to the extraordinary challenges we face. We owe this to the people, to the men and women, boys and girls who are not giving up, even in the darkest hours of war, who look still to the streaming blue flag for hope, the flag of our United Nations. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. I now invite delegations to view a short film on the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations entitled Better Together.
Chose peace. People who said, dignity cannot be broken. People who carried food on their backs, who rebuilt schools, who gave shelter to strangers. People who stood for the earth before it was too late. And the people who will carry it forward. The young, the unheard, the unstoppable. For 80 years, this has been and will be the work of humanity. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. 80 years and more for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. UN. Better together.
I give the floor to His Excellency Antonio Guterres, Secretary General of the United Nations.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, I invite you to return for a moment to our earliest days. When the organization first opened its doors, many of its staff bore visible wounds from war, a limp, a scar, a burn. One of them was Major Brian Urquhart, the second person to be hired by the UN. A British soldier during the Second World War. He had been blown up on a ship in the Channel. Witnessed the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp and carried for the rest of his life the limp from a parachute that failed to open. He was not alone. A clerk might quietly mention a bullet wound. A delegate, the shard of shrapnel still lodged in its chest. They had seen the worst of humanity, the horrors of the death camps, the cruelty of combat, cities entirely wiped out. And it was precisely because of what they had witnessed that they chose to serve peace. Excellencies, there is a persistent myth that peace is naive, that justice is sentimental, that the only real politics is the politics of power and self-interest. But those early staff were not idealists untouched by reality. They had seen war and they knew. Peace is the most courageous, the most practical, the most necessary pursuit of all. And in building the United Nations, they created something extraordinary, a place where all nations, large and small, could come together to solve problems that no country can solve alone. And yet, at this moment, the principles of the United Nations are under assault as never before. As we meet, civilians are targeted and international law trampled in Gaza, the Ukraine, Sudan, and beyond. As we meet, poverty and hunger are on the rise as progress on the Sustainable Development Goals falters. As we meet, the planet burns with fires, floods, and record heat raging through climate chaos. And at the same time, we are moving towards a multipolar world, but without strong multilateral institutions, multipolarity has its risks, as Europe learned in the First World War. To meet these challenges, we must not only defend the United Nations, we must strengthen it. And that is the purpose of Agenda 2030, the Pact for the Future, and the UN80 initiative, to renew the foundations of international cooperation and to ensure that we can deliver for people everywhere. Excellences, au fil des années, notre organisation a ouvert la voie à certains des plus grands triomphes de l'humanité. L'éradication de la variole, la régénération de la couche d'ozone, et par-dessus tout, la prévention d'une troisième guerre mondiale. Les défis des 80 prochaines années seront à la fois familiers et inédits. La lutte contre la guerre et la pauvreté se poursuivra. Mais il faudra également faire face au chaos climatique, aux technologies incontrôlées, à la militarisation de l'espace et à des crises encore inimaginables. Pour relever ces défis, souvenons-nous de ce que nos fondateurs savaient déjà. La seule voie possible, c'est celle de l'unité. Soyons à l'auteur de ce moment avec lucidité, courage et conviction et réalisons la promesse de la paix. Je vous remercie.
I thank the Secretary General. I have the honor now to give the floor to Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, former President of Liberia, 2011 Nobel Peace Laureate, and Africa's first elected female head of state, a champion of peace, justice, and democratic governments, a former United Nations staff member, and a steadfast voice for multilateralism.
Excellencies, Madam President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, friends, I'm honored to address this high-level meeting on peace and security as part of the UN 80th anniversary. 80 years after the founding, we must recommit to the Charter, to our common security, to the belief that nations can choose dialogue over destruction. We begin in Africa, our shared cradle of resilience and hope, where democracy is weakening, where fractures across borders from Sudan to the Sahel to the Great Lakes strain our regional architecture. Yet, across Africa, communities stand up to extreme violence. Regional bodies mediate transitions, and women's groups negotiate truces when the state is distant and humanity is near. We have learned hard lessons. Prevention costs less than reconstruction. Reconciliation is a process, not an event. Peace agreements require institutions and citizens to be real. When guns fall silent, skills training, jobs, justice, and dignity must follow swiftly. Liberia's story illustrates UN-led progress and success. The largest peacekeeping force joined Africa's forces to disarm fighters, support elections, reform security institutions, and create space for reconciliation and growth. India's all-female formed police unit strengthened protection and public trust. The mission ended with Liberia standing on its own feet, out of war, into a fragile peace with accountability, inclusive dialogue, and economic opportunity for young people. We must acknowledge that the multilateral architecture built to shield future generations from war is underperforming. That global leadership lacks a unified effort to respond to a technological-enabled world. Commemoration without candor is unaffordable. The world asks whether this House will protect civilians and uphold international humanitarian law. These are not words of despair. They are summons to repair. Our answer must go beyond words. It must translate into actions felt by a family in a tent, a nurse in a clinic, a child in school. A call for change, a renewed vision of collective security, and a broader approach to the triple planetary crisis and worsening inequality. The call for the new design of a new vision, better together, must ensure immediate protection of civilians, finance for conflict prevention, proposals that pay real people, leaders who are audible and accountable, women at the table with budgets that guarantee their participation in all peace negotiation delegations, and the deep weaponization of the information space. None of this is beyond our reach. It demands humility to listen, courage to compromise, persistence to implement. Peace is not built only in conference rooms, but in classrooms where girls learn without fear, clinics where mothers deliver safely, markets where youth find dignified work, courts where law is fair, and in daily acts of neighborly coexistence. 80 years on, the United Nations founding generation would ask if we are still worthy of the hopes inherited. Our answer must be yes. Not because the world is less dangerous, but because our determination is stronger. Better together. Your theme, better together, your theme, it must be a strategy. Regional bodies and the UN working together. Civil society and governments co-designing solutions. Women and men sharing power equally. Truth and reconciliation traveling the same road. Let us leave this anniversary with concrete commitments, funded priorities, and a timetable for action. Show those in shelters, standing in the bread lines, and awaiting news of loved ones that the United Nations, as it celebrates its 80th year, remains a place of peace, a place of refuge, a place of unity, and a place of hope. I thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Ellen Johnson Sirleaf for your strong and wise words. I now give the floor to Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland, former Prime Minister of Norway, former Director General of the World Health Organization, a medical doctor committed to health as a human right, and instrumental in placing sustainable development at the forefront of our international agenda.
Madam President, Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor for me to address you marking the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. I was born at the cusp of the World War II. My parents were both active in the resistance against the Nazi occupation of Norway, and we had to flee the country. Some of my earliest memories are from Sweden, where my parents worked for Norwegian refugees. And I grew up in a Europe where the ravages of war were still clearly visible, where millions carried terrible scars on their bodies and their souls. It is against this background that the UN was founded, not as a symbol, but as a solemn promise. A promise to equip humanity with legal and diplomatic tools to prevent wars of conquest and domination. A promise to enshrine universal human rights as a bulwark against totalitarianism, racism, and oppression. A promise to foster peace, development, and dignity for all people. So, Madam President, let me highlight two areas where the UN has made an undeniable difference that also are part of particular importance to me personally. First, sustainability. When Secretary General Javier Pérez de Cuellar asked me to chair the World Commission on Environment and Development, I accepted with great humility. And I am very proud of the report we produced, Our Common Future. It helped cement the concept of sustainable development in our collective consciousness. Thanks to UN-led efforts, we started charting a path towards economic development that does not destroy the basis of life for future generations, our climate and our natural environment. But we are today exceeding the planet's boundaries and approaching tipping points where there is no way back. Over 80% of the targets under the Sustainable Development Goals are today off track. Second, President, gender equality. During the UN's International Year Women's Year in 1975, I had just entered government for the first time. Many of my male colleagues hardly knew how to deal with me. In 1979 came the UN Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women. In 1981, I became Prime Minister for the first time. In 1995, 30 years ago this month, I delivered my address at the 4th World Conference on Women in Beijing. I spoke of the moral and economic imperative to end gender apartheid. I believed too optimistically that we would have come further by now. I did not foresee the intensity of the pushback that would come. Even today there are countries where not a single woman sits in the highest decision-making bodies, including among the P5. But despite such adversity, the UN has methodically worked to strengthen the position of women through education, through microfinance, through work for sexual and reproductive rights and health, and through intense and effective advocacy work. With resolve and determination, we will get there in the end. So, Madam President, I have lived longer than most of you. I have witnessed the tangible differences the UN makes through economic upturns and downturns, political ebbs and flows. I have no patience for those who dismiss the UN as outdated. We are going through a time of great geopolitical shifts and impressive, but also frightening, technological development. The UN as our common hub for getting the facts on the table, debating and deciding on solutions, and acting is more important than ever. We owe that not just to ourselves, but to the generations to come. Thank you.
I thank Her Excellency Gro Harlem Brundtland for her blunt and powerful words. I have the honor now to give the floor to Ms. Maria Ressa, 2021 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, award-winning journalist, professor at Columbia University, co-founder of Rappler online news site, and a fearless defender of freedom of expression in the face of constant political harassment and arrests.
President Baerbock, Secretary General Guterres, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I'm normally chasing you here, and here I am. It's actually a very interesting place. Look, 80 years ago, this institution was born to prevent humanity from destroying itself. Never again, after fascism manipulated information, eroded truth, and dehumanized entire populations to enable genocide and global war. Today, we stand on the rubble of the world that was, and the challenge is to rebuild the United Nations for now, for this moment, when similar forces that led to those atrocities 80 years ago are now surging through digital platforms, insidiously manipulating us for power and profit. The biggest battle we face today is impunity, and it leads to our dehumanization in both the physical world, where wars rage from Ukraine to Gaza, and in the virtual world, where our minds and emotions are manipulated by surveillance capitalism for profit. To fight that, we need information integrity to remind us to be human. I became a journalist because information is power. But news groups lost our gatekeeping powers when an atom bomb exploded in our information ecosystem, a technological one that's silently destroying the very foundations the UN was built to protect. This is the deadliest period for journalists in recorded history. More than 240 journalists killed in Gaza alone. More than died in World War I, World War II, Vietnam, and the former Yugoslavia combined. This is unprecedented. They're targeted, and there must be accountability. We're living through an information Armageddon, where lies spread 6 times faster than facts on social media. That's a 2018 MIT study. It is so much worse today with generative AI. And the 3 sentences I've said over and over since 2016, without facts you can't have truth, without truth you can't have trust. Without these 3, we don't have a shared reality. We can't begin to solve any problems, let alone the existential ones you heard from the speakers before me. We cannot have journalism, we cannot have electoral integrity, we cannot have democracy. This is manipulation of human behavior at the cellular levels of our countries. Algorithms reward outrage over empathy, spreading fear, anger, and hate, pumping us full of toxic sludge. Regulating technology isn't a free speech issue, it's about public safety. Because, as has been proven time and time again, online violence is real-world violence. As a Filipino, I'm proud that my country was a charter member of the United Nations, one of only 3 Asian founding nations. Our commitment to multilateralism and peace runs deep. But that legacy was tested under the Duterte administration. Among the actions it took, it filed 11 criminal charges against me in a little over a year. Until today, I still need Supreme Court approval to be here. But I'm here. And my former president, well, he was arrested in March for alleged crimes against humanity and is detained at The Hague waiting for trial. Impunity ends. The rule of law, championed now by the Philippines as it chairs the 6th Committee on Legal Questions, ultimately prevailed. We moved to it. The trends are clear. We are electing illiberal leaders democratically. As of March this year, VDEM said that 72% of the world is now under authoritarian rule. So we turn to you at the UN. It has its critics because you have to move faster. Security Council votes paralyze action on major crises. Outdated representation excludes rising powers. Bureaucratic processes respond too slowly to urgent threats. But as you know, the solution isn't to abandon multilateralism, it's to strengthen it by addressing the very impunity that undermines international law. At this time of creative destruction, I implore you to create. Here are 3 solutions. First, end big tech impunity through global accountability. We need binding standards for international to restore and regulate information integrity, just as we have for nuclear weapons and climate change. There are 2 new initiatives, first from the Vatican, created last weekend with His Holiness Pope Leo XIV, a declaration demanding artificial intelligence remain under human control with clear accountability mechanisms. The second one will be launched later today, a global call for AI red lines, which more than 200 of us have signed. We urge your governments to establish clear international boundaries to prevent universally unacceptable risks for AI, at the very least define what AI should never be allowed to do. Second, build alternative infrastructures for trust. It isn't just big tech that failed to protect the public in the virtual world. It's also you, the governments. At Rappler, we built a chat app using open source protocols. Countries that care about data privacy, France, Germany, all their government websites are on the Matrix protocol. It allows real people to talk to real people without manipulation. The vision is a global federation of trusted news organizations, because this is how journalism will survive and how we begin to build infrastructures of trust. Finally, the third one. Create. Create. That's our word today. Invest in comprehensive solutions. Let your imagination run. 3 examples that's happening now. More than 3/4 of UN members now recognize Palestinian statehood, showing that international law can advance despite impunity. On gender, the Nobel Women's Initiative have pointed out, demonstrated that in nearly every conflict around the world, women are leading efforts for peace, defying displacement, patriarchy, gender apartheid, and militarized violence every day. And finally, on Wednesday, Demokrasya Siyempre, 20 nations will pledge to strengthen democratic institutions and fight for information integrity. More than 40 Nobel laureates we have gathered together to support this multilateral initiative led by the Global South. Information integrity is the mother of all battles. Win this, and we can win the rest. Lose this, and we lose everything. Please choose courage over comfort, facts over fiction, hope over fear. A lot has changed since the UN was created 80 years ago. But its values, peace, human rights, justice, rule of law, these are more essential today than ever. It is time to create again, to build better. Together, please Act now, before it's too late. Thank you.
I thank Maria Ressa also for her very powerful words. I now invite Ms. Mariam Burka, United Nations Global Advocate for Peace and youth leader, whose work bridges art, activism, championing women's rights, youth empowerment, and peace building, to recite a poem.
The President, Secretary General, distinguished delegates, excellencies, good morning. Walking these halls, I realized that the United Nations was not built from harmony. It grew out of the ashes of war and the grief watered by the collective memory of what happens when dialogue and cooperation fails. Its foundation is not peace achieved, but peace pursued, fragile, imperfect, necessary, not just worth fighting for, but requiring a fight. And today, 80 years on, we gather to honor what has been achieved. Nations rebuilt, walls of division lowered, millions lifted by the shared will. But these are victories worth remembering, but the story is unfinished. The cracks in the foundation calls us to repair, to act, not to retreat. Our world bleeds before our eyes. Children in conflict zones, nations silenced by hunger and war. And it begs the question, are we witnessing the collapse of conscience in real time? Because behind every pact, there are people. Behind every statistic, there is a story. And behind every commitment that we sign, there are lives depending on whether we honor our words or not. And so this is not the time to feel powerless, because yes, hope and despair can coexist in the same breath, because healing is not linear. The United Nations is not a monument, it is a mirror, and it reflects what we have dared to imagine 80 years ago, and today, here, it asks, will we dare again? Will we dare to work better together? Because if the past proves that we can build peace from ashes, then the present demands that we build it again, louder, braver, together. I speak as a global peace advocate, not because peace is easy, but because silence is complicity, and so I will not be silent. You know, I used to think that peace was a place, a final destination we arrive at after all wars have ended. But I have come to understand that peace is not a line that we cross. It is a choice that we make over and over and over again, especially when it is the hardest, especially when it feels far away. Peace is not a silence we force into people's mouths. It is not the absence of war, but the presence of understanding. Peace is a child learning to sleep again without flinching at the wind. It is a mother not having to choose between bread and dignity. It is a father not having to swallow his voice to feel like a man. Peace is messy, like forgiveness. It does not arrive in parade floats. Sometimes it comes crawling through broken windows when we finally agree that being right is not better than being whole. Peace is not found, it is built, brick by brutal brick, by hands that once knew how to fight, now choose to hold instead. There was a time when we measured strength by how long we could hold a grudge. But today, let us measure strength by how long we could hold space for someone else's truth. Because there was a me and a you before there was ever an us. And if us is broken, then peace is what lets us lay down the shards without aiming at each other's throats. Peace is the poem you write after the war in your chest has finally run out of ink. It is the moment you return to your body and find yourself still standing. Peace is not easy, And so let us not forget the ones who have carried peace quietly through the fire. The women whose hands mend what war has torn, who rebuild homes from memory, raise children between checkpoints, hold their families like nations, because peace has always known the name of a woman, carried through the way that she chooses courage over collapse again and again. And so today I speak peace into the bones of this world, into the rubble, into the rage, into the ruins, because if war teaches us how to shatter, then peace must teach us how to stay soft, to stay human. And perhaps what makes us human is not that we always succeed in peace, but that we dare again and again to seek it, refusing to let our brokenness be the end of our story. Thank you.
I thank Ms. Burkhan, and as we conclude and after listening to this beautiful poem, let me emphasize again, peace is only a word and better together is only a slogan until we embrace it. So I invite you to embrace and live up to be better together over this 80th session.
This is not the story of an institution. It's the story of people. People who stood between war and peace and chose peace. People who said, dignity cannot be broken. People who carried food on their backs, who rebuilt schools, who gave shelter to strangers. People who stood for the earth before it was too late. And the people who will carry it forward, the young, the unheard, the unstoppable. For 80 years, this has been and will be the work of humanity. Not perfect, not finished, but always better together. 80 years and more for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. UN. Better together.
Before adjourning this meeting, I would like to remind delegation that the high-level meeting on the 30th anniversary of Fourth World Conference on Women will begin immediately in this hall. Delegations are therefore requested to remain seated while the stage is being prepared for the next meeting. The high-level plenary meeting to commemorate the 80th anniversary of the establishment of the United Nations has concluded. I thank you. The meeting is adjourned.
Distinguished delegates, please take your seats. We are going to start now. Please take your seats.
Good morning to those of you who just came into the room, and good to see the others again after our anniversary session. The high-level meeting of the General Assembly on the 30th anniversary of the first World Conference on Women is called to order. Heads of states and government, Secretary General of the United Nations, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, distinguished participants. I warmly welcome all of you to this high-level meeting convened to mark the 30th anniversary of the Fourth World Conference on Women and to renew our resolve to fully implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. This high-level meeting is held on the theme Recommitting to, Resourcing and Accelerating the Implementation of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action to achieve gender equality and the empowerment of all women and girls, in accordance with General Assembly Resolution 79/288 of 7th May 2025. Allow me now to make a statement as President of the General Assembly.
Please take your seats, distinguished delegates.
Human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights, once and for all. When these famous words were spoken by Hillary Clinton 30 years ago in Beijing, they were revolutionary. But if our daughters heard this today, wouldn't they rather think, why would women's rights not be human rights? Our daughters, who are the fastest sprinter in their high school, our daughters who are CEO of an AI startup, our daughters who have watched their mothers become the first female president of the Marshall Islands, of Namibia, North Macedonia, Peru, of Slovenia or Suriname. All presidents joining us here today. For so many of you, of us here in this room, we hold these positions that when we ourselves were young seemed unattainable, but are now almost normal for the next generation. Because we stand on the shoulders of giants, on the shoulders of women who paved the way forward also for us. Towards a world in which our daughters today regard women's rights, our human rights, as a simple fact, not as something revolutionary. Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, feminist leaders, ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate the courageous women who fought for every single phrase, for every single word in the Beijing Declaration. Their fight paid off. The Beijing Declaration was a watershed achievement advancing women's rights, resources, and representation. As Mama Mongella, how she was called, stated in 1995, a revolution has begun. There's no going back. Yet, 30 years later, the revolution remains unfinished. When the phrase, "she runs like a girl," is hailed as an insult, when highly qualified CEOs are called diversity hires, when a female world leader is attacked on social media not for the speech she gave, but for the wrong high heels she wore. That is when we remember how far we still have to go. There's no country in the world where women's rights are fully equal to men. And there are still too many places where even speaking about women's rights is a matter of life and death. Just weeks ago in Afghanistan, after the deadly earthquake, women and girls were left trapped in rubble as male rescuers were forbidden from touching them. As one survivor said, being a woman here means we are always the last to be seen. We see this also in Sudan, where the brutal civil war between two generals is literally being fought over women's bodies. I still have her voice in my ear when one mother told me, while I was sitting with her in a refugee camp, that she wishes that they all would have been simply killed instead of having to see her daughters being raped over and over again. This year alone, demand for life-saving post-rape support in Sudan increased almost 4 times. And this is no exception. 1 in 3 women globally will experience sexual violence at some point in her lifetime. 1 out of 3. This is us. And these battles extend to family planning. UNFPA estimates that today a quarter of women are unable to make decisions about their own health care, and roughly half of all pregnancies are unintended. Delivering on Beijing, on this revolution, means also that no male politician, judge or religious leader should dare to tell our girls what to do with their bodies, because they are human beings, not property. It's our body, our choice. In this regard, I'm honored we are joined by our first guest speaker, Cecilia Suarez, who is using her platform to speak out against this scourge in Latin America and the Caribbean, affecting as many as 76% of women in the region. But even in the darkest hours, women are not victims. They are survivors. They are heroes. And it's an extreme honor that we will also hear from our guest speaker, Nadia Murad, Nobel laureate, a hero who not only survived the unthinkable crimes of ISIS, but gave Yazidi women a voice and by that defeated a terrorist organization. Women like Nadia Murad remind us that women's rights are not only human rights, but human rights are the best weapon for peace. Excluding women peace builders doesn't just reduce the possibility of peace, it undermines its very foundation and longevity. Therefore, we are celebrating today not only Beijing, but also 25 years of Resolution 1325 on women, peace and security. Excellencies, Beijing and Resolution 1325 promised not only rights, but also resources. And there, the revolution has barely begun. At the current rate, reaching economic equality will take 123 years. But women's economic empowerment is not just about doing a favor for women, but a favor for every society, every economy. As they say, it's economics, stupid. Closing the gender gap would increase global GDP by $7 trillion. Which brings us to the third R, representation. We all know that when women are at the table, companies perform better, peace treaties last longer, and governments deliver more. Their presence is power. Yet, in this hall of principles, last year, fewer than 10% of speakers during high-level week were women. And out of all 80 presidents of the General Assembly, I'm only the 5th woman. Not even speaking about the Secretary General, where in 80 years we have never had a female SG. This is not just This is, as we can hear, not just a matter of representation, it's a matter of credibility to practice what we preach. But it's not only who is leading, it is how we lead. Leadership means collaboration. The theme of this 80th session overall is better together. A motto which also guided Beijing, where so many women came together in networks like Femnet, led by Memory Kachamba, a guest speaker here also today. Ladies and gentlemen, today we celebrate this spirit of better together and the courage of the women who paved the path to Beijing and beyond. But tomorrow we go back to work. As female presidents, as male presidents, as Olympic sprinters, as CEOs, as ordinary mothers and daughters. And just in case, while finishing the revolution from Beijing, we might hear that contemptuous phrase, "you run like a girl," we should remember what little girls all around the world would do. Exactly that. Proudly run like a girl, fast as hell, even in high heels, showing that women's rights are always human rights, that they are our rights, our future. I now invite the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres, to make a statement.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Excellencies, dear friends. 30 years ago, the world came together to affirm that the rights of women and girls are not separate, secondary, or negotiable. They are human rights. The Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action is the most ambitious global political commitment on women's rights ever achieved. And it has helped to power advances in some critical areas: legal protection, political participation, education, maternal mortality, recognizing the need to tackle violence against women as a global priority, and more. But progress has been slow and uneven, and no nation has achieved full equality for women and girls. Sustainable Development Goal 5, gender equality, is lagging far behind. Hard-won gains are now under attack. Meanwhile, conflicts and climate disasters are multiplying, and the human rights of women and girls are casualties of both. Cultural and structural barriers remain entrenched, and technology is spreading hate like a virus. A wave of misogyny is rolling across the world. Let us be clear. Equal rights and opportunities are not partisan issues. They are global imperatives and the foundation of peace, prosperity, and progress. Excellencies, dear friends, in every region, every country, every community, women and girls are fighting for their rights, demanding freedoms, combating abusive practices, rallying for legal protections, and organizing to take their rightful place at the table in decision-making and peace processes. And the United Nations stands with them. All leaders should do the same, by speaking out for the rights of women and girls, by making clear that tradition cannot excuse oppression, and by doing everything possible to realize the vision of the Beijing Declaration. Excellencies, dear friends, early this year, countries took an important step forward. The Commission on the Status of Women adopted a new political declaration committing to implement the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action fast and in full. So now all countries must live up to that responsibility. We need strong, visible support at the highest levels and concrete plans backed by real investment. To support women's organizations, services and solutions, to deliver the Beijing Plus 30 action agenda, to advance socio-economic empowerment, to defend women's rights, and to confront a challenge that was barely imagined 3 decades ago. Artificial intelligence is reshaping our world, but the transformation is unfolding in an industry dominated by men, shaped by biased data, and driven by algorithms that frequently reinforce discrimination. We must confront violence and online hate and ensure that technology serves equality, not exclusion. And that includes a priority in investing in women and girls' education in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Because women's participation in decision-making on this issue and every other, it is not a gift, it is a right. It strengthens societies, enriches debate, and boosts equality across the board. We must remove systematic obstacles to equality for women and girls. From discrimination to unequal pay and inequality before the law, we need universal ratification of the Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women. Excellences, enfin, nous devons prendre des mesures proactives pour assurer la participation des femmes à la prise de décision à tous les échelons. Ici, aux Nations Unies, grâce à des efforts soutenus, nous avons atteint et maintenu la parité homme-femme parmi les cadres dirigeants. And allow me a brief explanation on this. Some think that we had to bend the rules in favor of women to reach parity. Totally wrong. The only thing we did was to guarantee that there was effective equality opportunities for women and men, and that the selection processes had not a misogynist bias. And the result was parity at the level of the high direction of the United Nations. Nous poursuivrons nos efforts pour parvenir à la parité de l'ensemble de l'organisation, guidée par notre plan d'accélération pour l'égalité des genres. Excellence. Il y a 80 ans, la Charte des Nations Unies affirmait l'égalité des droits entre les femmes et les hommes. Il y a 30 ans, la déclaration de Pékin consacrait les droits des femmes comme des droits humains. Aujourd'hui, dans cette enceinte, nous devons entendre comment nous comptons transformer ces ambitions en réalité. Faites entendre vos engagements, présentez vos plans. Ensemble, réalisons l'égalité pour les femmes et les filles, une égalité dont notre monde a tant besoin. Je vous remercie.
I thank the Secretary General. I now invite Her Excellency Huang Shouwei, Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China, as host of the 4th World Conference on Women, to make a statement.
Distinguished Madam President, distinguished colleagues, China commends the General Assembly for convening this meeting to mark the 30th anniversary of the Beijing World Conference on Women. Just as what Madam President stated, the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action for Women has a milestone kind of significance. It is a source of wisdom and strength, and it continues to provide a blueprint for action that continues to guide global efforts towards gender equality. Over the past 3 decades, the World Conference on Women has been a catalyst for tremendous change, from advancing legal reforms to expanding social services, from empowering women to enhancing their participation. Countries have made notable strides toward gender equality. Countless women have undergone profound transformations, moving from silence to voice, from the margins to the center, and from dependence to independence. These achievements testify to the foresight and enduring vitality of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. Gender equality is not only a human right, but also a powerful driver of sustainable development. For the past 30 years, as host of the Beijing Conference on Women, China has honored its commitments through concrete action. Under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party, China has steadfastly advanced gender equality as a fundamental national policy, implemented 4 successive cycles of the National Program for Women's Development, and built a comprehensive legal framework of more than 100 laws and regulations to safeguard women's rights and interests. With measurable and effective institutional mechanisms, China has significantly strengthened women's empowerment in the fields of economy, health, education, employment, political participation, and social protection, benefiting 690 million women. China's women, with their creativity, continue to hold up half the sky in the nation's progress. China has consistently championed the advancements of women around the world. In partnership with the United Nations, China established the Prize for Girls and Women's Education, with Professor Peng Liyuan, spouse of President Xi Jinping, serving as special envoy. China has trained more than 200,000 female professionals from over 180 countries and regions, and has carried out empowerment projects totaling over $40 million in more than 20 countries. The Global Center for Digital Empowerment of Women, established by China, offers a new platform to help bridge the digital gender divide and to promote women's meaningful participation in AI development. Distinguished Madam President, colleagues, at present, the century's profound transformation is accelerating, and the global governance stands at a critical crossroads. Nearly 10% of women remain trapped in extreme poverty. More than 600 million women lived amid conflict, and violence against women, discrimination, and economic inequality continue. Developing countries face an annual funding gap of $420 billion for gender equality. These challenges call for urgent, more proactive, and pragmatic action. Chinese President Xi Jinping's proposal for a global governance initiative comes at a critical juncture. Advancing gender equality and the full development of women requires strengthened international cooperation, accelerated action, and sustained commitments. At this new starting point, China calls for the following: continued advancement of the equal development of women. Safeguarding women's rights and interests should be elevated as a national priority and embedded as a social norm. The allocation of resources to this end should be increased to ensure women's equal access to opportunities and their full participation. Continued empowerment of women in innovation and development. Quality education for women and girls should be provided. Digital technologies should be harnessed to strengthen their capabilities, support their leadership, and unlock their innovative potential. Continue to promote the shared development of women worldwide. All countries should uphold genuine multilateralism and fully leverage the vital role of the UN, deepen South-South cooperation and North-South dialogue, and expand financial and technical support for developing countries, leaving no woman or girl behind. Distinguished Madam President, dear colleagues, gender equality is not only a matter for women, but a cornerstone of human progress and human civilization. Let us remain true to our original aspirations and mission, continue to translate the blueprint of the Beijing Declaration and platform for action into tangible results, and work together to build a community with a shared future for all. I look forward to welcoming you at the Global Summit on Women in Beijing. Thank you.
I thank the Deputy Head of the National Working Committee on Children and Women of the State Council of China. I now invite Ms. Sima Bahous, Executive Director of the United Nations Entity for Gender Equality and the Empowerment of Women, to make her statement.
Principles enshrined in international law and the United Nations Charter, including the peaceful resolutions of disputes. We firmly maintain that there is no military solution to disagreements over airspace or territorial integrity. Continued escalations only serve to heighten tensions and undermine the process for a durable peace in the region. We believe that lasting solutions are found at the negotiating table, not through acts that can be interpreted as hostile. In this regard, we call upon all parties to exercise maximum restraint and engage in earnest, substantive dialogue. A durable solution will require a genuine commitment to de-escalation, confidence-building measures, and renewed focus for diplomatic efforts. To conclude, Mr. President, my delegation reaffirms its unwavering support for all efforts aimed at upholding the principles of international law and achieving just and lasting solutions consistent with the United Nations Charter. We firmly believe that the people in the region deserve a future defined by peace, security, and stability. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Somalia for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Russian Federation.
Thank you, President. There was a time when Europe, for many of us, was associated with the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, cutting-edge philosophy, culture, and science. Yet today, all of that, unfortunately, has gone, and it's gone for good. Voltaire, Rousseau, Kant, and other leading philosophers have been replaced with the von der Leyens, the Callises, and the Johnsons, as well as other small-time, blinkered Russophobes. Thanks to their efforts, primitive hatred for our country and an attempt to portray Russia as the main threat to pan-European security is, before our very eyes, becoming the only ideology of European states. They're trying their utmost to make the next generation forget the bitter experience of predecessors of today's Euro-integrators. For instance, the experience of Napoleon and Hitler, who suffered defeat at our country's hands, for which Europe paid a lengthy and painful price. Any events are immediately interpreted through an anti-Russian prism. The very idea that war with Russia is unavoidable is being frantically pounded into the heads of the European populace. Russia is being branded all sorts of things, portrayed as an enemy, not even going to the trouble in principle of using facts or evidence. When these assertions turn out to be false, no one even thinks about apologizing for spreading such blatant lies. Today, we will have an excellent opportunity to see this for ourselves, given that in the room we have a lot of European extras. These extras will, as per usual, will be letting their imaginations run wild regarding the threat from Russia. This paranoia has reached never-before-seen heights. Just last week, we were compelled to listen in this chamber to groundless accusations about supposedly Russian UAVs entering Polish airspace. Not a single piece of evidence that these drones were of Russian provenance has been provided to date.
Показательно и то, что всего через несколько дней стало известно, инцидент с повреждением крыши жилого дома в Люблинском воеводстве, ставший ключевым элементом этой антироссийской кампании, на деле оказался следствием ошибочного сброса ракеты с польского истребителя. А польский премьер Туск сегодня признал, что ни один найденный дрон не был начинен взрывчаткой и не представлял угрозы мирным гражданам. Польская же оппозиция прямо указала, что речь идет об откровенной провокации с целью попытаться втянуть Польшу в войну. Господин председатель, мы весьма серьезно относимся к обвинениям в адрес наших вооруженных сил. Всегда стремимся получить факты, которые позволили понять, что же в итоге произошло. Поэтому, стремясь разобраться в ситуации, мы незамедлительно предложили польской стороне провести двусторонние консультации.
Polish side to engage in bilateral
Однако
consultations
какой-то
with
адекватной
us.
реакции на эту
Yet
инициативу
we
со
didn't
стороны
get
Варшавы
a
так и не
sensible
последовало.
reaction from Warsaw.
Это свидетельствует лишь об
This
одном.
attests to
Правда, ни
only one
Варшаве, ни
thing.
Брюсселю не нужна.
Neither Warsaw
Им
nor
нужен лишь
Brussels
повод
want
для
the
нового
truth.
витка
All they need is a
русофобской
pretext
кампании.
for a new wave of the
Тут сложно даже
Russophobia
что-то
campaign you're
комментировать.
engaged in.
Уж слишком
It's very
явно
difficult
наши
to
европейские
comment.
соседи сами
Our
себя
European neighbors are
изобличают.
inculpating themselves so
Человек со
obviously.
здоровой психикой,
Anyone of
который
sound
знаком
mind,
хотя бы с основами
anyone
логики,
who
никогда не
is
признает
familiar
подобную
with
ситуацию
elementary
нормальной.
logic would never say
Но
such a
если вам со
situation
всех
is normal.
экранов, из
But yet,
соцсетей,
if
и со
on
страниц
every screen,
внушают, что
every social
Россия
media
ваш
outlet,
единственный
on
враг,
every page, you're
то
being
поверить
told that
можно
Russia
во
is
все,
your
что
only
угодно,
enemy,
и факты
then
и
you might start
доказательства здесь
believing
только
anything and
мешают.
everything. The facts, the evidence here are superfluous.
Сегодня мы с вами вынуждены
Today,
присутствовать на
we're
второй
compelled
части этого
to be
спектакля под
here to
названием
watch part
«Обвиняй во
2
всем
of this
Россию».
spectacle entitled Blame
Нашим
Russia for
соседям теперь
Everything.
померещилось, что по вине
Our
России
neighbors
произошло
have
нарушение воздушного
now
пространства
imagined
Эстонии.
that Russia is at fault for an incursion into Estonian airspace.
Доказательств, как всегда, нет.
As
Кроме
always, there is no
русофобской
proof
истерики
except
Сталина, которую нам
the
сегодня в красках
Russophobic
продемонстрирует
hysteria
эстонский
coming
коллега.
from Tallinn, which our Estonian colleague will
А между
wax
тем,
lyrical
факты
about a little bit
свидетельствуют о
later.
том, что 19 сентября
As for the
3
facts,
российских истребителя
the facts prove
МиГ-31
that on the 19th of
осуществили
September,
плановый
3
перелет из Карелии
Russian
на аэродром, расположенный в
MiG-31
Калининградской
fighter
области,
jets conducted a planned
который
flight from
выполнялся
Karelia
строго
to
в
an airbase
соответствии с
in
международными
Kaliningrad
правилами
Oblast,
использования
carried out in
воздушного
strict accordance
пространства.
with international airspace use rules.
Российские воздушные
The
суда
Russian
не отклонялись
aircraft
от согласованного маршрута и
did not
не
stray from the
пересекали
agreed route,
воздушное
nor did they
пространство
cross
Эстонии.
into Estonian
Их траектория
airspace. Their
проходила над нейтральными
trajectory,
водами
or their flight
Балтийского
was
моря
over the
на
neutral
удалении
waters
более
of the
3
Baltic
километров
Sea,
от
over 3
острова Вайнло.
kilometers from the island of Windlow.
Это подтверждается данными
Flight
средств
recorded
объективного
data
контроля.
confirm this.
Если бы в Эстонии этого
If
хотели, то
Estonia
могли бы
wanted
сами в
to,
этом
it
убедиться.
could have checked this itself.
Но такой цели у
But
Таллина
Tallinn
нет.
is not pursuing
Задача
such an
состоит в
objective.
другом.
Their goal
Вопреки фактам и
is
здравому
different,
смыслу
going
нагнетать
against common
истерию и
sense
обвинять
and the
Россию в
facts to
провокации.
foment hysteria
И вот уже
and
представители
accuse Russia
НАТО
of provocation.
сразу же поспешили
Thus,
назвать
NATO representatives
происходящее безрассудным
rushed to
поведением.
call what happened reckless
А глава
behavior.
европейской
And the head of
дипломатии
European
и по
diplomacy,
совместительству
who also
эстонка
happens to be
призвала
Estonian,
к твердой позиции в
called
поддержку
for a
стран
firm
Балтии.
stance in support of the Baltic states.
Откровенно
To be
говоря,
perfectly
нашим
frank, our
европейским коллегам
European
можно только
colleagues
посочувствовать.
deserve our sympathies.
Ведь годами
After
создаваемый на
all, the
наших границах
project they've
проект
been building
«Антироссия»,
on our borders
в
for
которого
years, the
после
anti-Russia
2014
project,
года
and
превратили
this is what Ukraine
Украину,
was actually turned
трещит по
into
швам
after
и сам
2014.
себя
This project is
дискредитирует.
coming apart at the seams.
Эта страна давно уже
Discrediting
стала
itself.
концлагерем имени
Ukraine
Зеленского и не
became the
жалеет своих
Zelensky
граждан,
concentration camp long
тысячами
ago. It's not
ежедневно
sparing
погибающих
its
в
people.
бессмысленной
They're dying by the
мясорубке за западные
thousands every
геополитические
day in a
интересы.
senseless meat grinder in
Режим
the name
Зеленского
of
довел свою
Western
страну до
geopolitical
того, что она стала символом коррупции,
Zelensky's
откровенного
regime has
воровства,
turned its country into a
нарушений
symbol of
прав
corruption,
человека,
outright
свободы слова
theft,
и
violations of human
вероисповедания.
rights, the
А
freedom
ведь
of
в
religion and
европейских
freedom of
столицах,
speech.
несмотря на все это,
In
по
European
инерции
capitals,
по-прежнему
despite all of this,
превозносят так
they
называемые
continue to
достижения
laud
Украины
so-called
и выделяют
Ukrainian
киевскому режиму
achievements,
деньги и
giving
оружие,
money and weapons to the
явно все
Kiev
больше
regime,
испытывая чувство
although
стыда за
they're
своих
clearly
марионеток
increasingly
и не
ashamed of their
понимая,
own
как
puppets.
выпутаться из этой непростой
However,
ситуации.
they can't understand how to disentangle
В
themselves
итоге
from
не
this
особо
fix.
креативные
As a result,
евробюрократы не
not so
находят ничего
creative
лучше, чем
bureaucrats have
нагнетать
found nothing better to
антироссийскую
do
истерику,
than to whip up
надеясь, что
anti-Russian
европейские
hysteria
избиратели
in the
ничего не
hope that
заметят.
European voters won't notice.
Странная
This is
стратегия,
a
и
strange
результат у нее,
strategy,
разумеется, будет
and
обратный.
without a doubt, it will
В
achieve
чем
the
еще
opposite of
нашу
what
страну в
it
ближайшее
intends to
время
do.
обвинят,
What
не
will they
утруждая
accuse
себя ни
Russia of
доказательствами, ни
next? After all,
логическими
they're not
объяснениями
bothering
наших действий.
to check the evidence nor the
Даже
logical
сложно
rationale
предположить, каков
for
может
our
быть полет
actions.
фантазии в
It's hard to
ситуации, когда
think
факты
where
никого
their
не
imaginations
интересуют.
will take us next when no one cares about the facts.
Господин председатель,
President,
мы, разумеется,
without a doubt, we
понимаем и то, что
understand
истерика
that
наших
the
европейских
hysteria
коллег
of our
не в
European
последнюю
colleagues
очередь направлена на то, чтобы попытаться
is also
вернуть на
directed at
антироссийский
trying
курс
to
новую администрацию
return
США во главе с
the
президентом Трампом.
new U.S.
Подорвать
administration
договоренности и понимания, достигнутые российским и американским президентами на Аляске месяц назад. Позволю себе процитировать в этой связи вице-президента США Джей Ди Венса, который на конференции по безопасности в Мюнхене в начале этого года озвучил следующие весьма нелицеприятные для Европы выводы. Угроза, которая меня больше всего беспокоит в отношении Европы, это не Россия, не Китай, и не любой другой внешний актор. Меня волнует угроза изнутри, отступление Европы от некоторых ее важнейших ценностей, которые она разделяет с США. Несмотря на очевидный диагноз, содержащийся в этих словах, в Европе предпочли пропустить его мимо ушей. Европа сейчас как неуравновешенный, параноидальный человек, абсолютно не способна реагировать на критику. Как и помнить уроки истории, ведь она для нынешней плеяды европейских руководителей и евробюрократов обнулилась после февраля 2022 года.
was reset to zero in February of
Соответственно, и делать
2022.
выводы из прошлого
Thus,
для
drawing the
нынешней
lessons of
Европы – это
history
новый
for
тон.
today's Europe is bad manners.
А это очень опасное
But this is
заблуждение.
a
Мы все
very
знаем, как безжалостна
dangerous
история к
path.
тем,
We
кто
all
забывает ее
know
уроки.
that history is ruthless vis-à-vis
В
those
общем,
who forget its
бывшие наши
lessons.
европейские партнеры,
Thus,
хотите
our former
истерить,
European
нагнетать
partners,
и
if you want to
продолжать
get hysterical,
бездоказательно
to
в чем-то
foment
нас
and to continue
обвинять –
levy
дело
baseless
ваше.
accusations, go
Но
right
это без
ahead.
нас.
But do
Мы в
that
этом театре
without our
абсурда участвовать не
participation. We
намерены.
won't be
И мы вам
partaking
там и
in
не
this
нужны.
theatre of the absurd. And you don't need us
Захотите
there.
серьезного
When you
разговора о
decide that you want
европейской
to engage in a
безопасности,
serious
о
discussion
судьбах
about
нашего
European
общего
security, about the
континента,
fate of our
о
common
том, как
continent,
сделать его
about how to
процветающим
make
и
this continent
безопасным для
prosperous
всех,
and secure for
мы к этому
everybody,
готовы. И вы
we'll be
знаете,
ready.
как нас
You
найти.
know where to find us.
Благодарю за внимание.
I thank you.
I thank the representative of Russian Federation for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Panama.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you,
Agradecemos
Mr. President.
la exposición
We are
proporcionada
grateful
por
for
el
the
secretario
detailed
general adjunto
presentation
Miroslav Jencha,
of
que
Undersecretary
nos
General
brinda un panorama
Jencha,
más
providing us
completo y
with a more complete
actualizado
picture of the
sobre los
events
hechos
that took
ocurridos
place
en
in Estonia
el viernes
on
19 de
Friday,
septiembre.
the 19th of September.
Queremos darle la bienvenida también a los
We'd also like
ministros
to welcome
que
the
distinguen hoy con su
ministers
presencia en esta
distinguishing
reunión.
us today with their presence at this
Hace
meeting.
apenas una semana,
Just a
en
week
este
ago,
consejo,
this
se
council
reunió para
met
considerar
to
con
consider with
urgencia la
concern
incursión de
the
drones
incursion
rusos
of Russian
en el
drones
espacio aéreo de
into
Polonia.
Polish airspace.
Hoy nos vemos
Today,
nuevamente en la
once
necesidad de
again,
abordar
we
hechos
find
similares,
ourselves addressing
esta
similar
vez con
events,
relación
this
a la
time
incursión de
concerning the
aeronaves de
incursion
combate
of
rusas
Russian
en el
combat
espacio aéreo de
aircraft
Estonia.
into Estonian airspace.
Estos incidentes cercanos
These
en el tiempo
incidents, so
en
close
que
together
ocurrieron y con la
in time
naturaleza de la
and
amenaza que
of such
representan,
threatening
ilustran
nature,
un patrón de acciones
illustrate a
que
pattern of
pudieran
actions
socavar
that
la
could
estabilidad
undermine
regional y
regional
que son
stability,
motivo de
and they are
preocupación
a
para
cause of
todos.
concern for us all.
Panamá rechaza cualquier
Panama
acto de
rejects any
intimidación
act
de
of
un Estado
intimidation
contra
of
otro.
one state
La
against
violación
another.
del espacio
The
aéreo de
violation
Estonia
of
no
Estonian
puede ser vista
airspace
como un
cannot be
hecho
seen as an
aislado,
isolated
sino
event,
como un acto que
but
amenazaría
rather
la
as an
paz
act
y la
that
seguridad
threatens international
internacionales,
peace and security,
pilares sobre los
the
cuales
very
descansa
pillars
este
upon
Consejo.
which this Council rests.
Señor Presidente,
President,
el mundo atraviesa
the
tiempos
world is
particularmente
going through
convulsos,
particularly
donde la
turbulent
proliferación
times
de
where
conflictos
the
en
proliferation
todas
of
las
conflicts
regiones
in all regions
impacta de manera directa y
is directly
desproporcionada a la
and
población civil
disproportionately
y a la
affecting
estabilidad
the civilian
regional.
population and
El
global
cúmulo de estos
stability.
incidentes de carácter
The
intimidatorio
accumulation of these
no
intimidating
contribuye en
incidents
modo
does not
alguno
contribute in any
a la
way
paz.
to
Por el
peace or
contrario,
international stability.
erosionan
On the contrary,
la ya afectada confianza
these
entre los
events
estados
erode trust
y
among
generan
states
un
and create a
clima
climate
de mayor
of heightened
tensión
tension
en un panorama
and
global que ya no se da abasto para sumar más
vulnerability
violaciones al
for
derecho internacional.
collective security, a situation that
Señor
the
Presidente,
world can no
el
longer
conflicto actual en Ucrania sigue sin resolverse y además
in this regard,
amenaza con expandirse.
we see that these
Estas
acts
acciones
are
en la región
expanding.
así lo demuestran.
Activities in the region
A
are
pesar de
showing
los
this,
esfuerzos
despite
infructuosos
the
e inconclusos que hasta ahora
inconclusive
se han intentado
results
por las
that have been
partes, seguimos
achieved
con la
by
esperanza de que
efforts of
solo
the
el
parties.
diálogo
We still
genuino,
hope
un
that genuine
compromiso
dialogue
decidido
and
y la
decisive
diplomacia pueden poner
diplomacy and
fin
commitment
a este
can put an
conflicto.
end to this conflict.
Aprovechemos
Let us
este
use
espacio en
this
el que hoy
space
se reúnen nuestras
where
máximas
today
autoridades
the
en el
highest
marco del 80
authorities are
aniversario
gathered
de las
together
Naciones
to
Unidas
mark
para
the 80th
retomar estos
anniversary of
esfuerzos
the
y avanzar en
United
la dirección
Nations to
correcta.
resume efforts in the
Panamá
right
hace un llamado
direction.
a la
Panama
prudencia
calls for
y reitera
caution,
una vez
and
más
we
la
reiterate once
primacía
again
del
the
principio
primacy
del
of the
respeto a la
principle
soberanía y
of
la
respect
integridad
for the
territorial de los
sovereignty and
Estados,
territorial
en
integrity of
conformidad
states,
plena con los
in
propósitos
full
y
accordance with the
principios
purposes
consagrados
and
en la
principles
Carta de las Naciones
enshrined
Unidas
in the
a los
United
cuales nos
Nations
comprometimos
Charter,
hace
to which
80
we
años.
committed
Solo
ourselves
mediante el
more than
cumplimiento
30 years
estricto
ago,
de estos
80 years
principios
ago. Only
podrá
through strict
garantizarse la
adherence to
paz,
these
la
principles can
seguridad y
peace,
la convivencia
security, and
pacífica
peaceful
entre los
coexistence
Estados.
among
Muchas
states be
gracias.
guaranteed. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Panama for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Algeria.
Thank you, Mr. President. At the outset, I would like to thank Mr. Miroslav
Yanka
for his valuable briefing. I would also like to welcome the Foreign Minister of Estonia and all the honorable ministers participating in this meeting. Mr. President, we meet today following recent reports that Russian military aircraft flew into the airspace of the Republic of Estonia on September the 19th. These developments could exacerbate tensions and further escalate the situation in the region, a region that is still suffering from the repercussions of the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. On numerous occasions, Algeria has stressed the need to avoid any action or reaction that could inflame tensions. We have also repeatedly stressed the danger of succumbing to the logic of polarization in the context of this conflict. It's imperative to avoid any endeavor that could inflame hostilities or exacerbate their potential repercussions. In this vein, I would like to highlight the following points today. First, we believe that it is important to maintain the momentum of the recent diplomatic effort in order to prevent any escalation that could prolong or expand the conflict. Thereby, it might undermine any progress towards peace and security in the region. Second, it has become necessary to give precedence to communication and coordination in addressing these incidents through a transparent and effective approach. This would avoid any misunderstanding or confusion, and it would help to avoid the recurrence. Last but not least, we would like to reiterate once again our call for the primacy of the language of dialogue and negotiation. We must adhere to diplomatic solutions as the only feasible way forward to reach a just and lasting solution to the conflict. In conclusion, Algeria remains convinced that the realization of peace and security in Ukraine and through it in the region as a whole can only be achieved through the intensification of diplomatic efforts aimed at finding a final solution to this conflict. This should be based on the principles and purposes of the United Nations Charter, taking into account the legitimate security concerns of both parties. My country also reiterates its commitment to support any effort that would contribute to the maintenance of international peace and security in the region. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Algeria for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Guyana.
Thank you, Mr. President, for convening today's meeting at the request of Estonia, following the unauthorized entry into its airspace of 3 armed fighter jets reportedly belonging to the Russian Federation. I also thank ASG UNGA for his briefing and welcome the participation of the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia and other ministers and high-level officials in this meeting. Mr. President, Guyana has taken careful note of the letter dated 20th of September from the permanent representative of Estonia, in which he asserts that this was the 5th violation of Estonia's airspace by the Russian Federation, marking a dangerous escalation and the most serious violation thus far. We have also taken note of the public statement issued by the Russian authorities denying that the 3 jets violated Estonia's airspace. Saturday's incident appears to follow a pattern of similar events in the region that are unfolding in the context of the ongoing armed conflict in Ukraine. When this council met last week to address a similar incident in Poland, we affirmed that the violation of a country's airspace is a serious breach of its territorial integrity and a violation of international law. We also agreed on the need for de-escalation and for the states involved to establish the facts and act responsibly to avoid any further escalation of an already dangerous situation. Today, as we confront another allegation of incursion by the Russian Federation, I would like to stress the following 2 points. First, as we did last week, Guyana calls for restraint and de-escalation, and for the facts surrounding this recent incident to be thoroughly clarified. Given that there have been similar incidents in the recent past, it is reasonable to assume that they will continue to occur unless appropriately addressed. In this respect, we underscore the need for the Security Council to have access to detailed and verifiable information regarding the incidents and encourage the relevant parties to cooperate with the United Nations toward that end. Secondly, Guyana recalls the legal obligation of all UN member states to comply strictly with international law, including the provisions of the United Nations Charter and Security Council Resolution 2788. Mr. President, members of the Security Council have a collective responsibility to find ways and means of preventing disputes from escalating, including through diplomatic efforts, and must apply the tools provided in the Charter and relevant conventions for the peaceful settlement of any dispute between states. On the broader question of the ongoing armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine, we reiterate our demand for an immediate and peaceful end to the war and for the full implementation of Security Council Resolution 2774. Any expansion of this conflict will have dire consequences for innocent civilians in the region and for the world at large. This must be avoided at all costs. In closing, Mr. President, I once again urge the Russian Federation to cooperate with the affected states as well as the United Nations in providing the necessary information and finding a peaceful path forward. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Guyana for the statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Sierra Leone.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also thank ASG UNGA for his briefing. We welcome the participation of the representatives of Estonia, Ukraine, and other participants under Rule 37. The letter dated 20 September 2025 from the permanent representative of Estonia reporting a serious violation of its airspace is of grave concern. This report, viewed together with the earlier letter from the permanent representative of Poland on the Russian Federation's drones entering its airspace, similarly reflects an alarming pattern, increasing the risk of a regional conflagration with global consequences. Mr. President, regrettably, the 3 rounds of talks in Istanbul, which led to agreements on exchanges of prisoners of war and civilian detainees, as well as the return of Ukrainian children, and which had raised hopes for a political solution, have not been matched with advancement in the ceasefire and peace agreement negotiations. On the contrary, military operations in Ukraine have intensified and now reached the breach of airspaces of Estonia, Poland, and Romania. The responses from the 3 countries and NATO underscore the gravity of the threat. They signal that prolonging the conflict risks spillover, regional escalation, and global insecurity. Given the adverse implications of a protracted conflict in Europe, the Council and the wider international community must intensify efforts towards peace. Sierra Leone has consistently called for an end to this war, urging the parties to embrace diplomacy and agree to a ceasefire that prevents further death and suffering. The humanitarian toll is devastating, with over 6,500 civilians having been killed in Ukraine this year alone, including rising numbers of children among the dead and injured. More than 10 million people have been displaced, creating the largest refugee crisis in Europe since the Second World War. Mr. President, Sierra Leone reiterates that the UN Charter enshrines the principles of sovereignty, territorial integrity, and the peaceful settlement of disputes.